in today's gospel, we hear Christ as he is explaining that the officials, the Pharisees, the scribes, the Sanhedrin are so worried about all of the rules and the rituals that the laws become who they are, and not what the laws are pointing towards, trying to guide people towards, and that is ultimately the love of God, the love of neighbor. And the laws are not to exclude anyone, but to bring into the sheepfold all. And they will know that they are cared for, and that the laws lead them to the sheepfold. And the folly of their faith traditions, what they were doing was excluding people and pushing people out, which was the opposite of what God is calling them to do and to be. And we can see that Christ does this throughout Luke's gospel. All we have to do is think of the Good Samaritan, where the priest and the Levite, probably because they would have been unclean had they touched the man who was beset by robbers. They walk around him. And Christ says the Samaritan that stopped was the one that loved. The rules didn't get in the way of the Samaritan. The idea of love allowed him to go around the rules, to do what was right, because the rules pointed him towards love. You and I, in our wonderful faith tradition, must recognize that we are not to worship the rules. We are not to worship the rituals. The rituals lead us to love God, to understand God much more fully. Our sacraments are signposts that point us towards God. The sacraments in of themselves are not worshipped, but what they do for us is what is worshipped and what is the guidance for us. So when we go to Mass on Sunday, we don't go strictly for ourselves. We go as community. And then when the parts of the Mass and the Mass has come to its conclusion, we have received Christ in sacraments, both in word and in the Eucharist. We can then go out and be changed into the world. We don't go for ourselves. We go so that we can be better in the world, so the community is better. That's what our Mass is. It is the coming together to understand that we are community. Going to Mass is not a great big giant check mark that tells us we're not going to hell this week. Going to Mass is a communal event where we worship the God that loves us, that we're nourished by the God who loves us, that we see that there are other members of our community on whom we can lean when things get difficult. And so we take this communal love, this communal generosity, and we take it out with us during the week. And that's living the rules, living the rituals that point us and our community to God. We, you and I, must never fall to the folly of the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin and the scribes, ever believing that the rituals are what are worshipped. The rituals point us to that which we worship. That is the love of Christ. And it is through the Eucharist and the sacraments point us, give us, nourish us, as the water and bread did for Elijah in the desert, so that we can get to the journey, so that we can get to the mountain of God. We will be strengthened in our journey to God. You must love in a communal way, to share with our brothers and sisters the reality, the living of being who God has called us to be. And with that, let us go, my friends, and be and live the rituals that point us to our loving God.